Today's task is to make the steering wheel for the truck, and what I've done here is I've prepared a set of drawings. So these are basically going to be my machining drawings. This is the overall size of the steering wheel, but what I'm going to do, so as you can see, it's 42 millimeters across. I'm actually going to make mine 40 millimeters so that then I can have the wooden surround overlap the brass that I'm going to make the steering wheel out of. And then I've made this drawing here, which is actually a guide to machining. So there are like critical measurements that I need to adhere to, such as the measurement between there and there, which is the center points of the mill that I'm going to put in to cut this curve. So there's a number of measurements in here that I've put on, which are going to be critical to the machining process once I've got the blank in the mill. Talking of blanks, I've actually started to make that. So I made this boss onto which I've soldered, you can probably see it because I've been machining a sheet of 1 millimeter brass. And that's going to be the basis of the steering wheel, and that's soldered onto here. And then as you can probably see, you see a bit of machining swarf there. What I've done is I've already machined this down so that it's actually the 40 millimeters that I'm looking for it to be overall. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in the lathe, and I'm going to drill a hole in the center, which will be 4 millimeters in diameter, and that will be used to center this. Once I've got that, will be used to center this in my rotary table, which is the tool I'm going to use to make the steering wheel. And once the steering wheel is all cut, then it's a simple matter of heating this up and melting the solder and removing it. What I plan to do is, this is 1 millimeters. I'll probably machine down to a depth of 1.5, just to ensure that I do actually clear the brass of the piece that I'm cutting. It will eat into the boss, but the boss is made of a bit of scrap metal, so it doesn't really matter. I've now drilled the hole in the centre of this boss that I've made. I've mounted my turntable onto the mill, and I've done a clocking exercise to ensure that this is now central. So the next thing to do basically is to start machining, for which I will need my drawing, and I'll come back once I've done some initial machining. And here it is. So I've completed the machining. So this is the body of the steering wheel. I've also just made a small boss to go in the centre with a little grub screw in it to hold it onto the shaft of the steering column. So next thing to do is to silver solder those together, and then I've just got to make a little covering boss that goes on the top, which I'll solder on a little bit later. So this is almost finished. The next thing to do is to turn my attention to making the wooden grip that goes onto the steering wheel. That's normally quite fun. Here is the finished metal components of the steering wheel. The next thing to do is to make the wooden surrounds I mentioned. So here I've got a piece of 2 millimeter thick timber. You can see a mark, which is the outline of the steering wheel, and what I have to do is basically to make a small depth cut in this, so that when the steering wheel sits on it and I put the other piece on, then effectively the edges will actually touch, and it's only the inside where you'll be able to see the metal. So the steering wheel itself is going to be 4 millimeters. So I'm actually going to have a steering wheel thickness which goes from this inner edge to about 4 millimeters. And as I say, I just draw a little drawing. What I will have at the end of the day is the metal of the steering wheel, and then I'll have a piece of timber which will be in 2 sections, which will be shaped like that, so the inner part of the steering wheel is accommodated in this slot of 1 millimetre. So it's 0.5 millimetre on each side. So that's the next thing to do. I need to make up a boss, because I will actually glue this piece of wood onto that boss and then machine it, mainly because machining thin timber is quite problematic, so supporting it all with self-adhesive tape is a good solution that I've used in the past. So watch this space. So what I've done now is I've made a boss, which you can see here, which is affixed to a piece of brass via this bolt, and I've stuck, you may be able to see it, but I've stuck double-sided sticky tape onto the boss, and I put the first components of the steering wheel on it, which I will use to make 1/2 of the steering wheel. So here is the steering wheel, or the centre of the steering wheel, which I've now painted in preparation for fixing the wooden parts onto it. And here you can see one of the wooden parts. So basically this, I created a laminate, which you can just about see there, and then I've machined the outer edge and a recess which takes the steering wheel. So I slip that in there, you will see the steering wheel sits in that recess, and then when I put the other part of the steering wheel on, oops, that's shifted, let's get that back in, and then put the other part on, I end up with the steering wheel being sandwiched within the two components that I've made. So that the next step is to glue those together, and then I can do the final shaping of the steering wheel so that it will be round when it's on the car. Here is the final steering wheel. So the two parts that I made, I glued on either side of it, and then I've shaped the wheel so you can see it's more or less rounded now. And then to give the wood a little bit of colour, I've actually waxed it with some furniture wax that I have, so it's a dark furniture wax, and then I've just painted I've just painted the metal work again. There was a little bit of damage when I held this in the lathe to turn this and shape it. So that's it. That's the steering wheel. In fact, you can see the paint glistening there lightly. It will be matte once it's dry. That's ready now to go onto the truck.